To celebrate the release of Call of Duty Ghosts, we're going to give you one of our most requested video series, the Call of Duty Zombies storyline. So I'm going to ask you a simple question this time. What is your best Call of Duty Zombies story? Everybody's got one. Were you betrayed? Did you kill 90 zombies? Is there a time that you just didn't sleep and you pissed in a bag? Tell me your story. All information gathered here is from the Call of Duty Wiki, and you'll find a link to that wiki in the description down below. While we did play these games, we didn't pay very much attention, and it seems like most of the story kinda came out of the last DLC, Origins. So without further ado, let's get started. While there is a zombie story that takes place during Mob of the Dead, it appears to be self-contained and doesn't relate to the rest of the story. Therefore, throw that shit out. The main story begins in World War I, when a German research group known as 935 has been tasked with creating powerful and revolutionary new weaponry. This group consists of two main scientists, Dr. Maxis and Dr. Richtofen. This tasking brings them to an archaeological excavation where an unknown element known as 115 on the periodic table gets discovered. After much research, they discover that the energy produced from 115 can create portals to bring machinery from an unknown origin. As research continues, they discover more and more wonders, which include an ancient box capable of delivering weapons from various time periods. I bet you wondered where that box actually came from, didn't you? Eventually, Dr. Maxis became untestable and paranoid. Things only got worse when he began talking to a child named Samantha, who was begging to be freed from a realm known as Argothia. Their research drew a lot of attention to them, and eventually they made it to the main chamber of the archaeological dig, where an ancient seal lay ready to break. After reading the writings on the walls around the seal, Maxis decided that the entire thing was made by an ancient race, and that an amplification rod would harness the power with 4 elemental staves. But the problem was, as with any ancient archaeological dig sites that you may come across in the real world, that they didn't have the 4 elemental staves, so Dr. Maxis had 4 replicas made so that they could continue their research. Meanwhile, Dr. Richtofen is convinced that Dr. Maxis has gone certifiably insane and plans to report this to his superiors, those of Group 935. While this is going on, just to make matters worse, Samantha's communications increase with Dr. Maxis as she informs Dr. Maxis that she is in fact his future daughter. At this point, even Dr. Maxis begins to doubt his own sanity. One night, soldiers are working around the dig when they see ancient figures emerging from a mound. The team was horrified to discover that by morning, many of these soldiers were either dead or missing. It is soon discovered that the strange sightings were actually the dead being reanimated by Element 115, and it was not long before the site had become simply infested by these creatures. The United States, along with Russia, got wind of the incident, and they sent in men to investigate. The United States sent in Tank Dempsey to retrieve Dr. Richtofen, which they considered a high-value target, whereas the Russians sent in Nikolai Balensky to make sure that the Germans were not developing a super weapon. Meanwhile, Dr. Maxis has slowly started to transform into one of the creatures, and as such, Dr. Richtofen removed Dr. Maxis' brain in an attempt to preserve it and place it into another body. After a bit of confusion, the 4 men decided to abandon their country's original plans for them, and then work together to survive the zombie attack. Oh, and the robots sent in to stomp on them from Group 935. The team managed to come up with a plan, and while protecting Dr. Richtofen began to create a makeshift Quattro rotor drone to house Maxis' brain, allowing Maxis to live temporarily until a body was found. Eventually, they were able to open the portal to the ether, which laid beneath the ruins, allowing Maxis to meet his future daughter, and for Samantha to be freed, severing her control over the zombies. Richtofen, Tank, Takio, and Nikolai were all rewarded, and the zombie plague was successfully contained. Months later, the war would end in Allied victory, and Group 935 disbanded due to Germany's fall. 21 years passed, and a second world war was on the horizon. Dr. Richtofen reformed 935 in an attempt to continue his research with Element 115 in his desire to improve German technology. Maxis joins the group, now in a shiny new young body that he managed to get himself, and helps with the research. It didn't take long for the group to hit a financial wall and run completely out of money, so Maxis decides to make a contract with the Nazi Wunderwaffe program to use 115 as a power source to develop new weaponry to help the Axis powers win the war. Maxis was hoping that despite this, the funds raised would still go towards helping mankind, after the war was finished, you know, and they eradicated all their enemies. Maxis begins researching and performing tests in the aim of producing teleportation devices, which the group would name the MTD. Majority of these tests failed until Dr. Richtofen and his fellow colleague Dr. Schluster performed a successful test while teleporting a walnut, the scariest walnut in the world. Dr. Maxis became jealous of this and accused the scientists of straying away from their own tasks at hand. Both Dr. Richtofen and Dr. Schluster became concerned that Dr. Maxis was planning on stealing their work. However, the tests continued until Dr. Richtofen volunteered to have himself teleported. Something went wrong during the teleportation, however, as Dr. Richtofen found himself inside a catacomb on the moon, where a large triangular device known as the MPD was located. Upon touching this device, Dr. Richtofen became assaulted by voices in his own head, developing schizophrenia, and then was teleported to the Himalayan jungles inside a place known as Shangri-La. Dr. Richtofen remained in the site for weeks, learning about a mysterious energy known as Vril. The good doctor finally returned to Group 935, armed with the knowledge to build the MPD and the Vril. With the help of the other scientists, Dr. Richtofen built a facility on the moon, known as the Griffin Station. Dr. Richtofen then began building the device, which he secretly knew to be a dimensional gateway to the Ether. Richtofen placed Schluster and his superior, Dr. Grove, in charge of the facility, as he continued his guise as Dr. Maxis' assistant. It was the very same Dr. Maxis that he planned to kill, and then he wanted to enter the ether and use the MPD to take control of the energy inside. Maxis and Richtofen began to create wonder weapons for the Nazi Party. They used designs found in the Japanese Rising Sun facility. Maxis eventually created a weapon called the Ray Gun. This ran on atomic cold cells, which were powered by element 115. In the meantime, Richtofen was able to use the electrical properties of the element known as Vin, which created a weapon that fired bolts of electricity. He named this gun the Wunderwaffe DG2. However, this weapon was so deadly that Maxis himself felt cautious in regard to its mass production. The initial tests with the matter transference technology devices also failed. Test subjects were either killed or exposed to element 115, which of course reanimated them into brain-dead zombies. The first successful test occurred after a dog had been sent through the device had failed to return. Richtofen believed that the dog may be traveling through time. Maxis believed that the MTD experiments to be failures, and the Reichstag saw this as an opportunity to use zombies as a weapon of war, and allowed Maxis to conduct experiments with this goal in mind. He performed this research in the now defunct theater in Berlin. The efforts to control a zombie army resulted in failure. Richtofen, however, traveled to a Siberian Group 935 outpost in pursuit of experimenting with 115 on living test subjects. He hoped to develop a serum able to render the human mind responsive to commands from another. After killing off the first prisoners of war that he obtained, Dr. Richtofen was in need of new test subjects. And it is at this time that the original cast would actually return. But we'll have to find out what happened with that story next time. Make sure you follow us on Twitter, subscribe to the channel, go to our Twitch as we stream on most nights of the week. Also, make sure you go to our Let's Play channel if you want it. oh god, guys, that like announcer voice. Alright, go to the Let's Play channel if you want to join us on some random games that we're playing through right now. Thank you for joining us, and don't forget, Assassin's Creed will be returning, and we are working on the rest of this zombie series. Oh, and we might be working on Halo on the side, since everyone seems to be requesting that one also, and all the Final Fantasies, and we're working on Silent Hill, and we're working on these other games that involve people that kill things. I don't know, there's games like that.